I mean, I understand what the number one seed means. When you get it, you play home field advantage. It's easier to get to the Super Bowl. But just like A.J. Brown said right there, enough of the 17-0 talk, because it starts to creep into the locker room. If you win 9, then you win 10. Then it's 11, then it's 12. Then the louder noise starts to come. Can they do it? And just like all of us as fans for teams, we want to see teams do certain things and get certain milestones and things of that nature. It also affects the locker room because they start thinking about it and making decisions on whether or not now you're sitting at 15-0, but you haven't locked up you locked up the number one seed, but now you got a chance to go 17-0 and do something nobody's ever done before. Should I rest him? Should I start him? All of those sort of things, that's out the window now. They still control their own destiny because the head-to-head matchup with Minnesota. And I understand that the Giants are creeping ahead. I understand that the Cowboys are still good. We don't know what the Buccaneers and Green Bay might do down the line in terms of the playoffs or San Francisco. But if they still control their own destiny as far as I'm concerned, as far as getting the number one seed, because they still got to see the Cowboys again. They still got to see the New York Giants twice.
I agree with you, Mina. That's how I started off the show, and that's where I'm at right now. Because you didn't run the football as effectively as you could. You couldn't get Washington off the field. They spent 40 minutes chalking up that amount of time. That's not a good sign. And Jalen Hurts didn't have his greatest game, and this was against a decent defense. Well, what do they have? There's a decent defense in Green Bay, even though I don't know if they'll make the playoffs. There's a decent defense in Dallas. There's certainly a decent defense in San Francisco. And so when you look at it from that perspective, if you're having trouble with the Taylor Heineke-led Commanders, okay, then the reality is you could potentially have a problem with anybody. It certainly instills a level of confidence in a lot of teams going up against them. Get physical, run the football, play that grinded out kind of game, and let the Eagles try to beat you that way. If you are a team with better talent than the Commanders, which there are several teams in the NFC who are, then obviously that bodes well for you. And I think that's the message the Eagles sent last night. If you played better offensively, I wouldn't think that way. But the fact that you struggled the way that you did sends a bad message to me.
Well, see, two teams that I look at that they beat that people think are good teams are the Minnesota Vikings and the Dallas Cowboys at the time when Cooper Rush was playing good. They beat both of those teams, and they beat them both in Philadelphia. So when you look at it from that standpoint, I don't look at, like a lot of people, who they're playing. A win is a win is a win, no matter what the level of competition is. As I said to you earlier, Stephen A., it does not matter. If you stack up those W's, as Bill Parcells would say, you are what your records say you are, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, but I can't sit up there and say the competition doesn't matter. That's where Keyshawn and I completely go off the rails.
It does not.
I will never accept that. The level of competition matters. Yes, it does.
Okay. It doesn't. It doesn't matter.
Keyshawn, I think to go back to the question about the loss, our issue is not necessarily that they lost one game and they're not getting the record. It's that, and I think Stephen A. both see, this team is more vulnerable than people expected. I certainly think that's an important takeaway coming from last night. And now you're not just looking at one loss. You're potentially looking at more losses. So that's when it becomes less about breaking records and more about dominance and holding on to that number one seed.
But what makes them vulnerable? Because they walked into a team that the letdowns always happen when you play against teams that are not very good, like the Washington football team. You overlook them and you just walk through things, doing things differently. A.J. Brown had one catch for 7 yards. How many times is that going to happen?
Yeah, look, there was some fluky things about this game. Granted, turnover luck went the Eagles' way the first 8 games of the season, and sometimes that tends to flip. But to me, what was most concerning is the run defense. Going into this game, the Eagles had one of the 2 worst run defenses in the NFL. I was concerned, frankly, and I'm concerned when I look ahead to opponents like the Titans and, of course, the Cowboys, who have a very good run game. In the first half, as you saw, the Commanders did not let the Eagles get the football. Brian Robinson just kept running it 2, 3, 4-yard chunks at a time. And when we look ahead to the playoffs, and like Stephen A. said, matches up with the likes of San Francisco, Dallas, Green Bay, that run defense is a legitimate concern and one that the Eagles need to address.
I will say this. The Commanders have won 4 of the last 5. They started off the season 1-4. They're now 5-5. Their victories have come against, who is it right here? It's Chicago, Green Bay, Indy, and Philly. The one loss was against Minnesota, and that was only by a field goal. So the Commanders might be better than we're giving them credit for. That's also something to take into consideration. But I don't believe they're better than the San Francisco. I don't believe they're better than the Dallas. I don't believe that. And so when those are the teams that you're possibly going to have to face down the road, to give them the recipe and the ingredients to derail the Eagles is not a good thing for the Eagles. And by the way, A.J. Brown, who I believe is a stud, big time. One problem with him and one problem with him only. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but I don't think I'm wrong. Was he wearing a Lakers hat?
I didn't
It looked like a Lakers hat.
I need to look at it.
This is
I need
not
to see it.
this is not
agree.
the time. This is not the time when you're talking about being successful
Oh,
and
man,
you're talking
stop.
about you don't need to be wearing a Lakers hat. That might mess with you. That might mess with you. Yes, like it's like
Yeah, he's loyal to his team.
no. I'm just
Yeah,
telling
I'm
you
saying.
that you never know at this particular moment in time. It might be a form of contamination.
Oh, stop.
I'm just saying. And right now they struck. You know what I'm saying?
All right, what about
Leave us alone.
Yeah, really? I noticed you said we today. You didn't say that for about 3 weeks. You know, when they were en route to 2-10 start. You didn't say that for about that. Now they we again because they beat the Nets.
Golden State
Okay.
struggling.
Who's the reigning defending champion?
Man, stop,
Who's the
man.
reigning defending champion?
Okay, they won last year. We won 2 years ago. Leave us alone.
More like 3.
Or whatever, 3
More
years
like
ago. Leave
more
us
like
alone,
3.
man.
See, you don't even remember.
All right, what about Keyshawn? What what about their run defense when Jordan Davis is back?
I think when you start to get bodies back, you look different. Look at the San Francisco 49ers. They got bodies back. They look like a different team against the Los Angeles Chargers. Buffalo, when they get their secondary help back, they're going to look different. And I think when Jordan Davis comes back in the lineup, things will tighten up a little bit better. Now, everybody makes perfect points in terms of the run defense and some of the run teams that they could eventually see during the playoffs. There's no question about it. But we ain't even there yet. And I'm willing to give them the opportunity, a chance to fix that.
That's nice of you. Extend that grace.
Now we define what's nice. Molly's on one.
No, I was just letting Mina. I was
Yeah.
waiting for Mina to respond.
Oh, God.
Just.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do think Jordan Davis helps a lot. The on-off numbers are very dramatic. You saw last night.
One could easily argue that when you look at the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott is the weak link. What we have been lamenting is whether or not Dak Prescott can be that dude when it really, really counts, because we're still waiting after all of these years. You just brought up Cooper Rush.
Right.
All right, and how his QBR is 10 points higher in the same amount of games. That's an indictment when you're a star quarterback who's got paid $95 million over the last 2 years.
What do you think? Is Dak the weak link in Dallas?
No, absolutely not. What their weak link is they need somebody else in the passing game. Right now, we're sitting here on November 15th. Their second leading receiver is Noah Brown. That's their problem. So Cooper Rush played well. I thought they should have run the ball more in the fourth quarter. Tony Pollard, to me, is their best offensive player right now, but they need another receiver, like very similar to what's in Chicago. But Dak Prescott's
So
a
is
better
the Amari
player.
Cooper situation a mistake in retrospect?
1,000%.
It's only a mistake because they couldn't figure out economically how to make it work.
I thought you told me there's no cap. You're the one who's always telling me there's no cap.
There's no cap. They pay who they want to pay.
Well,
If don't wanna
shouldn't they have
pay-
wanted to pay Amari Cooper?
They didn't think his production was worth it. It's a mistake. They didn't
Yeah,
think
it was a mistake,
If he
yeah.
was a $10 million receiver, they would have made it work. Instead, he was a $22 million receiver. So they're like, at $22 million, we can get this from CeeDee Lamb at
You know why I don't buy
$1.5 million.
I don't buy the argument about Dak, Mike, and I'll tell you why. Dak is good. I'm not saying he's bad. I don't think he's the weak link, but no one has it perfect. Like, Dak needs it perfect. It's not like he doesn't have receivers on the team. He has a running back. He has an offensive line. He
Yeah,
has a
but
great defense.
Max-
He has so much stuff that we're really sitting here going, oh, if only he also had, Jamar Chase, boy, he'd be.
But Max, if you are running if you're running domino is what you call it, if you're running short domino in the red zone and the receiver and the tight end stacked behind each other and you pull the trigger because they stacked, it's not Dak, that's them. On third down, before the fourth down call, if CeeDee Lamb explodes off the ball with sudden quickness in and out of his break, cross face, that's an easy completion.
I have
for
no
the
doubt
first
you're right.
down.
Key-
Big man ball is right there.
Mike, I have no doubt the key is right about that. What I'm saying is the great ones figure it out. Like, if you got a lot, you don't need every year the Cowboys, well, they would have won the Super Bowl. Well, their secondary wasn't quite good. They had an injury here. There's one they have a lot every year. Dak doesn't do anything with it. He's won one playoff game in his career. It's year 6.
Yeah, but
One year he was hurt, and then he had a bad
Max.
offensive coordinator, and this year he needs an alpha receiver. Like, what's it going to
Max,
take?
number one, and Jay, they were winning with Cooper Rush. They had a certain formula. Fine. When he came